Hey everyone, welcome back to Bad Hombre Garage. Follow along today as I'm going to install my Speedway 12 circuit wiring harness. So before I forget, before we get started, go ahead and just click down there, hit the subscribe button please, it helps me out. And you're going to want to follow along as there's going to be a lot of learning that goes on today. Alright, so like I said, this is what we're working with today. It's Speedway's 12 circuit wiring harness kit. They have a couple different to choose from. The 12 circuit, the 20 circuit. I went with the 12 circuit, and for this old hot rod, I'm not going to use all 12 circuits in this setup. So this is what I have. Let's get to unboxing. I'm going to show you what we're dealing with before we start working to put this thing in the car. This is the package it comes in. This one comes with a real nice setup of color instructions, okay? But let me tell you, this is important. This is the second time I've used this kit. The first time it came with other instructions, and I was able to do a little research and pull it up online. If you use this kit, you got to do that. You got to search up this number right here, and you got to pull it up online, the instructions for the 12 circuit wiring harness from Speedway, okay? This is like a 20-page document, but this is gold, all right? It actually walks you through with a bunch of do's and don'ts. It has wiring diagrams, and then my favorite part, and I got to do my homework still on this, is it has you sit down and list every electrical component on the car. Okay, and the reason you have to list these is you'll go through and you can decide what do you want to power that the harness doesn't have a wire for, and also what wires will you just not be using from the harness. Or for example, there's some wires in there that might have been designed to go to the front of the car, but maybe you're putting something in the back of the car instead. So you need to know that beforehand, and you can switch things around and line your wires up. So that's gold. If you don't use one of these kits, if you're doing your own, I'll tell you, that's how I'll do it anyways. Just sit down and just list from the back of the car to the front every electrical component. That way you know where every wire is going to go. And if you follow these instructions, that's what it has you do. We'll get to that in a second. Here's what comes in the kit. It starts off, it's got some, let's see, your main wiring kit from the alternator, some headlights, harnesses included in here. This is the main harness itself right here. Come on, there we go. Okay, this is the main harness of the car, and it comes with this nice fuse block. I'll hold it up here where you can see it, which the lid comes off, already loaded with fuses, 2 relays, everything's already mapped out on the top, and everything else just ties together here, and it's got some pretty specific instructions on how to deal with the kit, and it comes with your flashers as well. Oh, and this one, these 2 brackets here in this kit are adapters for a GM steering column. The last kit I used this on was on a 46 Dodge pickup that had a S10 frame under it and actually a Corvette, an older Corvette steering column. I used that harness and those clips, put the wires in just per the instruction, and they just literally plugged right into that steering column. And I had high beams, low beams, turn signals, flashers, horn, everything that comes off the steering column. So it's good. It's really aimed towards the GM platform. I can't speak for the others very well, but I know that it works well for the GM. Okay, so back into the instructions here, or back into the box. Again, it has these real nice color diagrams of what's included, where everything's supposed to go, instructions on how to set up your turn signal switch connections if you're going to use like the GM style, like I was just talking about, how to hook up your headlights. Okay, that's pretty handy, but I'm telling you again, you make your money by printing off these instructions, filling out the workbook in the back. Okay, I'm going to go through and do my homework, figure out all my electrical components, and then I'm going to take this harness out and I'm going to lay it out on my garage floor next to the car. I'm going to unclip a lot of the zip ties on it, stretch things out, and I'm going to do exactly what I mentioned earlier. I'm going to put the wires to the front that go to the front, that go to the back, and basically going to have 3 major bundles. and have the front of the car, in the cab, and then the back of the car, right? So we're talking headlights, turn signals, engine harness, my dash harness, and then in the back my tail lights and what'll be my fuel pump as well. And I got a couple oddball things. My brake light switch is about halfway back on the car. My line lock is about halfway back on the car, that kind of stuff. So, okay. A couple tools of the trade that we're going to be using today. I just go with the old school wire stripper pliers here. Wire strippers and clippers, and then a set of crimpers, okay? I'm not getting too fancy. Works well, lasts a long time. Some guys are really good about getting a good twist set up and a heat shrink on there, and it's better than the butt connectors, but whatever. This is what I'm using today. Some other things I have. I just picked this kit up off of Amazon. It's got good ratings. I've never used it before, but it's a butt connector with heat shrink on it. We'll find out how well that works. And I've got my own stash of terminal ends, both slip-on, clip-on, rounds. And then I'm going to use some of these as well, especially for the stuff that'll be outside the car. Heat shrink tube to go over the ends and to kind of make them watertight, hopefully. And then I got another of these. These are just, you get them at Harbor Freight, lengths of it, cut them to whatever you want, heat shrink. So I'm using that today as well. I've got a pile of zip ties. And then I've got my multimeter once we start putting power on things to check. And of course my test lamp, which I'll be dragging out here in a minute. Before we ever get into putting power on the car though, I've got to walk through that homework of lining up my wire harness and then get ready to put it on the car. Alright, we'll be back. Alright guys, so I've done my homework and walked through each of the accessories listed on these sheets in the instructions, as well as sat there in my chair and stared at the car and thought of every electrical accessory I'm going to want on it. Here's some examples of some things that got changed, okay? Like, for example, electric fan. Well, this whole car's got a mechanical fan. I'm not running electric fan. But nowhere in here is there a provision for a fuel pump. So I think that's good. It's a 14 gauge wire. I think it's good. A good place to run my fuel pump. Likewise, line lock, right? Power antenna. Not something I'm going to have on this car, so I run my line lock wire there. And I just went through and made my own annotations. Use it, remove it, or make little notes as far as, hey, I'm going to not use it for that purpose, but use it for something else. And then, went through and updated, like added on here, fuel pump, what it's actually labeled, the wire itself, because these wires are labeled every 6 inches as fan. I know that's my fuel pump. It's a gray line, 14 gauge, and so on. Third brake light, that's another one that I'm not using on this car, but I'll tell you, on that 46 Dodge pickup I did, it had a 700 R4 transmission, and it needed some sort of power to know when to unlock the torque converter, and that was perfect for that. I didn't run a third brake light on that car, on that truck, but that was perfect. I just routed it to my torque converter on that thing. It worked. But anyway, so you go through, find out things you need, things you don't need, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to lay it out on the garage floor, uncoil some of it. It's very important, and it says in the instructions not to undo these 3 that are closest to the fuse, or else I think you lose track of a bunch of stuff. So don't undo these 3 cable ties. But I'm going to start clipping some cable ties and unrolling it and laying it out and start moving wires the appropriate directions. Okay, so what I'm working on now that I have it laid out, I have wires going to the front of the car, wires that go up under the dash, and then wires that go to the rear of the car. Pretty simple, right? So we need to go in and make some of these changes, like for my fuel pump. We know that that was labeled fan gray, and it was going to the front of the car. So I'm going to go into my bundle to the front of the car, find the gray wire, labeled, there we go, fan, And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work to pull this wire out of this harness. Try not to make a big mess of it. Okay? Because we're not sending this to the front of the car anymore. Now it is my fuel pump power wire, which, if you look, the reason I picked that one is there's 2 relays in this car, and one of them is for the fan. So that's very nice, very generous of them to give me that. I don't need the fan, so it'll work great for my fuel pump. Alright, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pull that wire out, and then I'm going to lay it back and tie it in with my wires going to the rear of the car, and then I'm going to go through and make any other changes and adjustments like I did on my, like I lined out on my worksheet. Alright, what a mess, huh? I've got wires everywhere. But let me walk you through with what I have been working on and what I figured out works best for this wiring harness. Okay, so just like I talked about before, you're going to have to adapt it to whatever your car is. Like, I had mistakenly thought I was going to use the antenna power wire, but after chasing it through the harness, I realized the power antenna wire was just one of those that like went from the radio to the wire, so it was no good because I'm not going to have a radio. So I just eliminated that wire and I came up with a different one to use in that instance. So some examples of things I switched around in this harness. Choke. I'm not using an electric choke, but I do need power for my line lock. So I took my electric choke wire, instead of it running in the harness to the front of the engine, I ran it back to where my line lock's located, and so on. So here's the harness, and here's how it's laid out on the ground. Right there, the central node, obviously the fuse block. You have wires that go under the dash, wires that go up the steering column, wires that go to the rear of the car, and then wires that go to the front of the car, to the engine and such. So that is basically in 2 different bundles. One is my engine wires, like my wires to the starter, main power, ignition, start wire. They go that direction to the starter, and then the other bundle is obviously for my headlights, park lights. Okay, so some other things we had to do weird in this, okay? Like in my wires that went to the engine, I had a coil wire, but I'm gonna mount my coil not up on the engine, but underneath my dash. So I had to reroute that one, just pull it from that loom, and then tie it in here to my under the dash wires. And then, that makes sense. So there's lots of those that you have to readjust. Oh, like my brake switch lights, okay? The brake switch lights went to the under the dash area, or the steering column, like thinking like a GM column. Well, my brake switch is about halfway back on the car underneath, so I had to run it with my rear lights, rear wires. So there's a brake out hot wire, and then the switch return that goes into the logic for the brake lights. The other thing that confused the issue a little bit, I'm not using a GM column, obviously. I'm using one of these cheapy guys here, Universal deals. There's a close-up, probably closer than you wanted. One of these guys that's going to mount on the column. And it has different colored wires, but on it is a diagram, and you can kind of see the logic that is involved in that. And so it gets a little confusing because this wiring harness says, you know, like left turn. Well, one of them is an indicator, left turn indicator that goes under the dash. The other one is my signal wire for the left turn signal that comes from that thing. So anyway, a little bit to figure that out. Pulled some of the wires out that I didn't need. Here's some other ones I didn't need. Temp sending unit. So I'm using mechanical gauges. So this one, temp sending, that went from my under the dash to the engine, gone. Pulled that thing out. Oil sending unit, same thing. Third brake light. Okay, so this one just basically was redundant. In fact, it was tied in with my brake light switch under the dash, and then ran all the way back to the tail light area of the car. Don't need it. Not running a third brake light, gone. And then the power antenna wire, as I said, which just basically went from under the dash area out to the front of the car. Don't need that one. So it's gone. My choke wire is now my line lock. And what else did I end up doing? Oh, I have a AC and heat power wire, which that one's just going to go under the dash, and that'll be for like a cell phone charger. Bare necessities like that. Okay, the other thing I did is up under my dash, I went and tied in this piece of square tube into my dash supports, and I welded it in both sides, ground off the paint. It was just a piece of scrap square tube. So now I can mount my coil to it, my fuse block, tie in there real well, and then I'm going to take a ground wire. Well, it is grounded through here, and I got to make sure I ground my body to the frame of the car, which is where the negative post of the battery is. I'll also ground my engine block, of course, to the frame of the car. Grounds are as important as anything when you're wiring the car. So my next move is to take that fuse block and all this harness, drag it in here into the car, mount my fuse block up here, and then start figuring out which of those wires go where. Drill a hole, probably run it down this way, and I'm going to drill a hole out the front right side for all my front stuff. My rear stuff will go down the left side of the car, punch it through the firewall in the back to tie into my fuel pump, fuel sending unit, and then my tail lights will be out the back. I have to drill a hole for my coil wire because my coil will be under the dash. And I got to mount my coil under the dash as well. So that's the next move. There's a lot going on with this. It's dinner time. I'm going to take a break, and I might drink a cup of coffee with dinner because I'm going to stay up until I'm done with this. All right. All right, guys, it's after dinner. I'm back in here. I did one more move with the car, and that was to mount my fuse box under the dash. So you can see here, I just tied it to this cross piece, and I got my coil mounted here. It's tight with that. I didn't really think that one through, but it'll work. So now what you can see here is I got my wires pointing everywhere. Dash, steering column, front of the car, rear of the car. Okay, now the fun begins. Now I got to start routing, drilling holes, and then eventually start terminating these wires. But I think I got to go make an ice cream run first with the kids, so we're going to do it. I might be up all night. We'll see. All right, so I've been thrashing here, and I can't remember if I actually had the dash in last time I brought you on or not, but here you go. Here's the dashboard in the car with my gauges thrown in. So I got this in, and I got my wire harness mounted up in here. Now I got to start routing wires, and that's the tricky part. Part of it is my turn signals and whatnot, so I got to get my column plugged into the car before I can finish that. We might not get to that tonight, but I do want to have stuff like my gauges, oil pressure, temperature, voltmeter hooked up. The other thing I got to think about here is my ignition switch. Where do I want to put my ignition switch and my headlight switch? Good thing is I don't have to wire up a headlight switch tonight because I don't have one. It should be here tomorrow actually. But my ignition switch, do I drill it out, put it in here, over here? Yeah, I can put ignition here, headlights here. I can just drill there, put my ignition switch, I can put it over here. I don't know. Sad thing is this video will be done and I'll be jamming on that before you guys see that. So you can give me your opinion. I'd love to hear it. Put the comment down below, make some bets, place bets, see where it's going to end up. I don't even know. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off for a little bit because I've got to dig in, like I said, put my ignition switch in and start running wiring. I'm going to have to punch a hole in the firewall, and I got a lot. Yeah, I don't have to hook up any headlights or tail lights tonight, but I can't scrimp on certain things because I do have to hook up my fuel pump, that kind of thing. So I'm going to get on it. We'll see how far I get. It's about 9 o'clock. I'll bring you guys back after a while. Alright guys, well, I figured I'd bring you back in here, give you an update, see how things are taking shape. So if you follow those Speedway instructions, which I highly recommend, it tells you to recommend you start with the rear of the car, then you do the front of the car, then do the dash. I think that's the order it goes. Anyway, it recommends the rear of the car first. So that's what I did. Oh, I've moved my fuse block over here. It was just going to frustrate me over there because this is the best way for the rear loom to go. You can see I got my steering column loom over here, my dashboard loom over here, my front of the car loom headed out that way. I zipped this up, ran it back through a little, whatever you call that thing, to the back of the car. I'm getting tired. And then here's my brake light and my line lock switch power wires, which are going to go straight through the floor there into those components inside there. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to last tonight. Going to get the critical wiring done. But you can kind of see how this starts to shape up here, right? That's the big thing. You start clumping and clustering, and things will start to take shape. So now the next thing I need to do is work my dash stuff, I believe. I'm going to hook up my dash wiring. Go ahead and put the dash in the car, probably. Yeah, I'll bring you back in a bit. Hey guys, I'm packing it up for the night. You can see the progress we made. Well, I'll start in here. So I've got a little bit ways to go. Mainly where my steering column comes in, and then that's all my turn signal business. This is for my headlight switch. I don't know where you place bets, but that's where my ignition switch is. My headlight switch is going to go right here. So these are my wires for it. My distributor wires there. You can kind of get an idea of how I tried to tidy things up. For the loom that went to the front, same thing for the loom that goes to the back. Got a few things to tidy up and tuck up inside there. But tomorrow I'm going to install the steering column, wire up my turn signals, and really I could crank it, probably make the thing run. We'll see if we get to that tomorrow. It's pretty late at night, and I burned a lot of bridges staying out in the garage late like this tonight. So I'm gonna wrap it up. Call this a win for now. So you can see I still have to go tie in my headlights, make those look pretty, my turn signals, and then the same thing here in the back for my tail lights. I got my fuel pump tied in with the relay, but my tail light wiring's there, and my main lead for the battery I need to button up. So that's it for tonight, folks. When we come back tomorrow, I will be finishing up this wiring.